So this is interesting. It came through yesterday and I was just like, man, GamesRadar is like Kotaku Jr. They can't get really on the level of Kotaku, but man, did they try. GamesRadar ran an article talking about how StellarBlade and the censorship is all one big misunderstanding, and they had an exclusive quote from one of the creators of the game talking about how everyone's got it wrong, how the outfits on Eve were intentionally designed to be that way, and that it's just a big misunderstanding, guys. Can we just move on and play the game the way we at Shift Up wanted you to play it? Because, yeah, we take everything at face value here, right? GamesRadar does. Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out SmashJT.com for the full article breaking down this wild story originating from GamesRadar. Yes, GamesRadar. The same GamesRadar that I talked about with Austin Wood, how he completely contradicted himself when he talked about how much he loved the penis jiggling physics on Baldur's Gate 3, but then when it came to the sex appeal of Eve and StellarBlade, oh, that was a problem because it detracted from the story? I don't know. I can't keep up with what these guys think. It kind of feels like they make their opinion based off of the way the wind is blowing on the morning that they wake up. But this story I had to talk about. So here it is, clear as day. We have a quote from CEO of Shift Up, Kim Hyung-tae, saying, "I don't think that just because the costumes are vulgar doesn't necessarily mean they're good. So this is something that was modified for quality. As a result, there are parts where eroticism is lessened or emphasized. This is the final product that we want to show as the intended result. In short, Eve's outfits are fashion first, not sexy first, if we are to take this quote at face value," which clearly GamesRadar did because it runs perfectly with the agenda of GamesRadar, Kotaku, and many other outlets out there trying to push this forward about how StellarBlade isn't really about the censorship and everyone's got it wrong, and defending Sony at all costs because corporate alignment. I don't know. I don't even want to try to dive into that. They just don't like to see awesome tit physics, and I get it. That's the agenda they want to push. But the reality is, this quote makes absolutely no sense in the context of what we've seen transpire since the launch of StellarBlade. Two things come up that I take issue with. One, GamesRadar coverage of this quote oversimplifies and dismisses the legitimate concerns of the fans. By emphasizing Kim's comments that the changes were for quality and not censorship, the article that they talk about fails to engage with the broader context of why the fans were concerned in the first place. The piece completely glosses over the passionate discussions about the artistic freedoms of the game creators in the first place. Like, they just on a whim decided to cover her up because they felt like that looked more dignified? That flies completely in the face of what StellarBlade was going for in the first place. It makes no sense. And two, the article also attempts to force the hand of the reader to trust that there are no shenanigans or political agendas going on behind the scenes to make it look good for Sony throughout what has devolved into an absolute PR nightmare. And Sony is in full damage control after Grums took this by the reins, created the FreeStellarBlade hashtag, made an entire change.org petition that is approaching 100,000 signatures of people that want Shift Up to put the designs of the original outfits back in the game that were removed with the initial day one patch. That apparently, here's the biggest thing in all of it. So we are to believe Kim that this was their intention at Shift Up and that everyone just completely misunderstood everything. It's what Shift Up wanted. Can we just go with that and not argue it? I mean, okay. But then why did you work for years developing the game, creating it to look the way it does, and then in the weeks leading up to launch, completely change all of it to cover all of it up? I can't help but think there was a little bit of interjection by someone named Sony coming in and saying, hey, that looks great, but you know what would be better? If you cover that up, because we don't really like that on our games. That's the reality of the situation that Shift Up right now, in my humble opinion, is covering for Sony, covering their ass, because this is a PR nightmare for them, and the only way to try to resolve it is if Shift Up shows that they're on the side of Sony, and that this was their decision all along. Something that GamesRadar doesn't even enter the question. Doesn't talk about it all. They're just like, oh, here's a comment from the CEO of Shift Up. Yeah, we'll just take it at face value and not question any of it because it goes along with our narrative. Tim's argument that the changes were made for fashion rather than sexy appeal is another point that deserves even more scrutiny. While it is valid for a developer to prioritize aesthetics coherence and character design, the abrupt shift in Eve's appearance suggests that these decisions may not have been purely artistic. It just feels like there's something else going on here, and they have motivation to ensure that the reality, the truth, does not get out there. GamesRadar's coverage also disregards the voices of fans who initially raised concerns about potential censorship. Remember this tweet from Shift Up talking about how StellarBlade would come uncensored, that they would not be censoring anything, and then there's a day one patch censoring everything. That kind of flies in the face of what they said. If we are to believe that, again, leading credence to the fact that maybe this was not Shift Up's decision, but it sure feels like they're trying to help Sony with PR damage control to smooth everything over to make the entire brand look better. Hopefully people just forget about all this and just buy StellarBlade, and no one's fighting, no one's arguing. Just play the game, you know, who cares if it was censored? Who cares if things are blocked off? Don't worry about that. Just buy the game, because at the end of the day, we want to control you. In the end, GamesRadar's article of StellarBlade's costume redesigns exemplifies the pitfalls of biased and one-sided reporting. By failing to critically engage with the timing of the changes, the developer's rationale, and the perspective of concerned fans, the piece does a disservice to its readers and the broader gaming community. As consumers and enthusiasts for a new brand like StellarBlade, we deserve a more balanced and thoughtful exploration of the issues, instead of just taking a quote at face value and saying, there you go, guys. StellarBlade always was intended to look like this. The censorship was not actually censorship because it was the developer's idea, not Sony. So just put down your pitchforks and your torches and just go out and buy the game, because there's no problems here. There's no interjection by any third parties or Sony coming in saying, let's change that. No. Shift Up has come forward and told us that. And let's not question any of this. That's the way the article comes across, and honestly, it's gross. I wish that journalism would do a little bit more investigating, be a little bit more critical, and fight for the gamers, for us, instead of just peddle a narrative, an agenda, and say, just eat it. That's what we give you. Eat that agenda, eat the narrative, and just move on with your day because we told you to. It's kind of what it feels like. And in addition to that, the snarky tone that it's written in is just really getting old. These SJW types that just have to put one over on you because they're better than you, it comes across as so obnoxious to the end user. I mean, they start this article off saying, it's called fashion, sweetie, look it up. Like, almost in a way talking down to you for daring to question anything. I'm not a big fan of that, especially, like I said, with StellarBlade coming out proactively and promising everyone that it would not be censored, and then having a day one patch to censor everything. There's an issue there, and that flies directly in the face of everything that was promised and advertised leading up to launch. Is it the biggest deal in the world? Not really. Not really. This is more of a stand on principle. Like, you can't say one thing that you're going to do one thing and then say, oh, actually we're not, and not give a reason for it. Not be honest and open to your audience about that. When in fact, what they've done the entire time is deflect, ignore, and pretend there's not an issue here. And that's exactly how a slippery slope starts. So that's why I am taking a stand here. That's why Grums took a stand here. And that's why a lot of journalists are attacking us, because we dare question the system. That's the problem with all of this. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. If you guys want more information, check out the Smash JT article. I will link it in the description below. And if you haven't already, check out Grums' petition to free StellarBlade, and let's get this thing past 100,000 signatures. That would be amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.